Chapter 1. The battle had been relentless. The black expanse of space torn apart by flashes of laser fire and the sudden, deafening silence of destroyed ships. Commander Alexis Brant stood at the command deck of the Valor, staring through the reinforced glass. Her crew moved swiftly around her, eyes fixed on their screens, inputting orders and keeping track of the fight that still raged just outside the ship. The Kren fleet had arrived in force, their battle-hardened ships attacking with deadly precision. But the Valor, with its superior maneuverability and experience, was giving them a fight. "Captain, the Kren flagship is retreating." Lieutenant Voss's voice broke the tense atmosphere, a small sliver of relief threading through the report. "We've disabled their propulsion systems. They won't be going anywhere." Brant's fingers tightened on the armrest of her chair. "Not yet. We need to capture one of them, force them to talk. Bring down the comms array. Let's scramble their communication systems." "Understood," Voss responded, his fingers flying over the console. The tactical situation was delicate, and Brant knew that in this war, every second counted. They had to cripple the Kren's ability to regroup, but more importantly, they needed information. The Kren had proven themselves ruthless, relentless, and calculating. Brant's eyes narrowed as a plan began to form. Seconds later, the hum of the engines altered. The familiar whine of their energy shields adjusting hummed through the floor. "Shields holding steady," Chief Engineer Lee shouted across the deck, offering a rare but necessary reassurance. But Brant's focus was fixed on a massive Kren ship now floating helplessly in their grasp, its once proud hull battered, sparks flickering from various sections. The General's flagship, Krakow's command ship, was just the beginning. She had a different target in mind. "Set course," she ordered, turning to Voss. "Prepare a boarding team. We're going to capture them." There was a pause before Voss spoke again, his voice hesitant. "You sure about this, Commander? We could finish the job, destroyed entirely. They're not giving us much of a choice." Brant's gaze hardened, her decision already made. "This is the kind of opportunity we've been waiting for. We capture him, we get answers. We execute him, and we send a message. But answers are what we need, not just blood." The tension was palpable. The crew knew what was at stake, the risks involved, but Brant's reputation for strategic thinking was what had gotten them this far. She had earned their trust, and now it was time to prove her judgment once again. Minutes later, Brant stood in the war room, watching as her officers prepped for the boarding operation. The team would infiltrate the Kren vessel through the damaged hull, quietly disabling whatever resistance the Kren crew might pose. It wasn't a grand display of force. It was surgical, silent, efficient. "Prepare the force," she ordered, her voice calm but firm. "We need him alive. This isn't about a fight. It's about interrogation." The soldiers gathered, their faces set with determination. They knew their commander was right, and that made the moment all the more significant. It wasn't just a mission. It was the key to understanding their enemies, a rare window into the Kren Empire's operations. As the shuttle launched, Brant remained at the command deck, watching through the viewport as it approached the crippled Kren ship. There was no time to waste. Her heart raced slightly faster than normal, the quiet hum of the ship's systems filling the space around her. The shuttle touched down on the outer docking bay of the Kren ship, and the doors opened. Brant's team advanced, their boots echoing across the cold, silent corridors. The ship was eerily still, almost as if the alien soldiers were waiting for them. The air was thick with the smell of burned metal and ozone from the damage. Inside, they encountered little resistance. The Kren soldiers had retreated or died in the battle. The alien technology was unlike anything Brant had ever seen, sleek, angular, and pulsating with energy. Yet, there was no time for admiration. They had a target. Brant led the way down a narrow passageway until they arrived at a secure room deep within the heart of the Kren ship. The door slid open, and there he stood, Krakow's. The Kren general, tall and imposing, stood surrounded by his fallen guards. He didn't flinch when he saw Brant and her team. His eyes, cold and calculating, met hers with a fierce intensity. "So, you've finally captured me," Krakow said, his voice rich with contempt, the words cutting through the silence like a blade. Do you think you can break me? I have fought your kind for years. I will die, but my empire will never fall. Brant's lips curled into a tight smile. Your empire is already crumbling. You're the one who's about to fall. Krakos sneered, but there was something else in his eyes, something calculating, something he wasn't revealing. He had expected this, but he hadn't expected her. A woman, human, yet standing with the poise of someone far older, far wiser than her years suggested. I've been through worse, he muttered, the faintest trace of a grin playing on his face. You'll find nothing in my mind that you can use. Brant stepped closer, her voice low. I'm not here for your mind, Krakos. I'm here for your empire. You see, your failure is my victory. You're a prisoner, and no matter what your people believe, there's nothing more dangerous than that. Her words were deliberate, every syllable measured. She wanted him to understand. Brant had no intention of killing him. At least, not yet. The Federation needed him alive. For what? Information, strategy, leverage. She signaled to her team. They moved in, securing him, keeping him silent as they moved him toward the shuttle bay. Back on the Valor, Brant watched as Krakos was placed in the holding cell. His body was motionless, his gaze still defiant, but there was something in his expression that unsettled her. Perhaps it was the quiet realization that his invincibility had been shattered. The ship returned to full speed, its engines vibrating beneath her feet. Brant turned to Voss. We've got him. Now, we find out how far he's willing to go to protect his empire. Understood, Commander, Voss replied. His voice, always steady, now carried an edge of anticipation. Brant stared out the viewport, her mind already working. The Kren had lost one general, but that was just the beginning. The real battle, she knew, was about to unfold, one that would require not just military might, but something more, the ability to understand the enemy. And that, for now, was a victory in itself. Chapter 2, the stillness of the command deck was shattered by the familiar chirp of an incoming message. Brant, seated at the helm of the Valor, instinctively tensed. The quiet was unnerving, and the battle had only just ended. The enemy had retreated, but this was a time of uncertainty, not relief. Commander, Voss's voice cut through the silence. You're needed at the comms room. Brant nodded, rising from her seat without hesitation. Something about the urgency in his tone told her this wasn't routine. She walked swiftly to the comms room, her boots echoing down the narrow corridors. The crew moved around her, their expressions weary but alert, their faces etched with the exhaustion of battle. They had fought hard, and the Kren had left a mark. It was the next move that mattered most now. Inside the comms room, Voss stood at the console, his eyes fixed on the incoming transmission. He looked up when Brant entered, the anxiety clear in his face. It's Federation Command. Commander, he said, his voice low. They're calling about Krakos. Brant's stomach tightened. The Kren general, their high-value prisoner, was no longer a mere enemy. They were now a symbol, a pawn in a larger game. Without a word, she took the seat beside Voss and turned to face the transmission screen. The familiar face of Fleet Admiral Daria Ruiz appeared, her stern expression a sharp contrast to the warm light that filtered through the room. Commander Brant, Ruiz's voice was clipped precise. I trust you're well aware of the significance of your recent capture. Brant glanced at Voss. Yes, Admiral, she replied carefully, not fully certain where the conversation was heading. Ruiz's lips pressed into a thin line. You're not only a soldier, Commander, you're a representative of humanity's ideals. This prisoner, this alien, must be treated with humanity. You will release him. Brant's breath caught, her heart stalling for just a moment. Release him? Her mind raced, trying to grasp what she had just heard. Admiral, I must clarify, Brant began, her voice steady, but her mind scrambling for clarity. This is an enemy general who has led attacks against us, against human lives. We need him for intelligence. This is a military decision, not a diplomatic one. But Ruiz's expression remained unwavering, her eyes hard with authority. This is the diplomatic decision, Commander. The Federation has long stood on the principles of mercy and strength, and your actions will set a precedent. Releasing him is not a sign of weakness, but of our power, of humanity's refusal to fall to vengeance. Our species is better than that. Brant remained silent, her thoughts spinning. Mercy? The word seemed out of place in the harsh realities of war. This wasn't just a war. It was survival. It was humanity's fight for existence. They could not afford to be seen as weak, not in the face of an enemy like the Kren. I understand, Admiral, Brant said after a pause, her voice steady despite the turmoil inside. But you're asking me to release an enemy general who would have gladly destroyed us, without a second thought. The Admiral's gaze softened just slightly. This is our test, Commander. We need to show that our strength isn't in destruction, but in restraint. This gesture, this act of mercy, could change the course of this war. It could lead to a new path, peace, perhaps. You'll release him. That's an order. Brant's hands clenched on the armrest. She could feel the weight of the words settle in the pit of her stomach. It was an order, but it didn't make it any easier to swallow. She had been trained to make tough decisions, but this was different. This wasn't about strategy or tactics. This was about a moral choice, and it carried consequences far beyond the battlefield. I will comply with your order, Admiral, Brant said, her voice betraying no emotion. But I need to ensure that this decision is the right one. The Admiral gave a tight nod. It is, Commander. The Federation stands with you. Humanity stands with you. Make it count. The transmission cut off. Brant sat in silence for a moment, the room heavy with her thoughts. Voss, standing beside her, waited patiently. I can't believe this, she muttered, more to herself than to him. The Federation wants to show mercy. To a Kren general. Voss stepped forward, his voice cautious. Commander, I've read the orders. You have to release him. It's not just politics, it's about our reputation, about how the galaxy sees us. If we show mercy, if we show that we can afford to be better, we set an example. But he hesitated. But you're right. It's not that simple. Brant stood up, pacing the room. Her mind was in overdrive. She had led soldiers in a battle, made countless decisions in moments of chaos. But this was something different. This was about who they were as a species, as a people. The Kren were brutal, merciless. They had no compassion. And yet, they were asking her, asking humanity, to show it. What if they see it as weakness? Brant said, her voice hard now. What if the Kren see it as an opening to strike harder, faster? Voss looked at her, his expression a mixture of concern and respect. I don't know, Commander. I'm not sure. But this is bigger than just us, bigger than the valor. The Federation believes this is the right call, and so do I, if I'm honest. It's a long game, Commander. We got to think about the future, not just the present. She stopped pacing and turned to him, her face resolute. I won't let this decision weaken us. I'll release him, but I won't forget why we're here. And I won't let our mercy be mistaken for cowardice. Voss nodded, the understanding between them clear. The decision had been made. They were going to release Krakos, not as an act of surrender, but as a challenge to the galaxy, to the Kren, and to humanity itself. Let's make sure this counts, Brant said, her voice now steady, her resolve unwavering. As the comms room door closed behind her, Brant could feel the weight of the upcoming decision pressing down on her shoulders. But she had a mission, and no matter the cost, she was going to see it through. Humanity's future depended on it. Chapter 3, the gravity of Brant's decision settled on her like a weight, heavier than any armor she had ever worn. She had made it clear, the Valor would release Krakos, but the implications of that action had yet to unfold. Sitting in her private quarters, Brant stared at the cold, metallic walls, her mind far from at peace. She could hear the hum of the ship's engines through the floor, a constant reminder that she was still very much in the middle of a war. But for the first time in a long while, it didn't feel like a battle of strategy. It felt like a war within herself. The Federation's orders had been clear, but Brant had never been one to simply follow orders without questioning them. The message from Admiral Ruiz had left her with little room for doubt. Release the prisoner, show mercy, and let the universe see what humanity was made of. It was an opportunity, one that could either save lives or cost them. A knock on her door broke her train of thought. Brant didn't need to look to know who it was. "Come in, Voss." The door slid open, and Lieutenant Voss stepped inside, his expression unreadable. He had been with her through countless battles, but this was different. This wasn't just another skirmish. It was a decision that could shape the future. His words came out carefully, weighed with consideration. "You're still thinking about it, aren't you?" Voss asked, standing by the door. Brant didn't answer immediately. Instead, she looked out the viewport, the stars outside reflecting the storm inside her. She knew what Voss was referring to, the release of Krakos. It was one thing to make the decision, but another entirely to live with it. "I don't know, Voss," she said quietly. "This feels wrong. The Federation wants us to be the bigger people, to show mercy, but I can't help but feel we're giving up an advantage. They're not asking for a victory. They're asking for a symbol." Voss moved closer, crossing his arms. "That's exactly why we need to do it. Mercy isn't weakness, Commander. It's strength. The Kren will see it, even if they don't understand it. We've always fought with everything we have, but showing restraint, that's a message." Brant let out a long breath, still staring out into the infinite abyss. She could hear his words, but they didn't settle. Instead, they twisted inside her. She had led her crew through blood and fire, had seen them fall and rise again. But this felt like an impossible task. "I've spent years fighting for survival, Voss," Brant said, her voice low, almost weary. "Every decision has been about ensuring we're one step ahead, staying one breath away from death. And now I'm supposed to believe that mercy will win this war." She shook her head. "I can't just forgive them for what they've done, for what they want to do. They're Kren. They'll never change." Voss didn't respond immediately. Instead, he moved to the small window, his gaze drifting to the distant stars. "And that's exactly why we need to show them something different. Humanity can be better. We've always been better. In this war, in this fight, we have a chance to show them that. To show them that our strength lies in more than just our ability to fight. It's about being human, not just warriors." Brant's fists clenched at her sides. His words echoed the very argument that had been running through her head since she received the orders. Humanity's ideals. She had heard that phrase countless times before. It had always sounded hollow, until now. Now, it was a burden she wasn't sure she was prepared to carry. "What if I'm wrong?" she asked quietly, more to herself than to Voss. "What if releasing him is a mistake? What if we send the wrong message? The Kren are ruthless. They will see mercy as a weakness, and they will take advantage of it. I know them. I've fought them." Voss turned, his face a mixture of concern and conviction. "Then we'll deal with the consequences. But, Commander, you're not alone in this. We all stand with you. The crew, the Federation, they believe in this. And I believe in you." Brant's heart tightened. The loyalty in his voice, the faith he had in her. It was almost too much to bear. But it wasn't just the crew that had to be convinced. It was her. She needed to believe in this decision, to see it not as a liability, but as a strength. "You're right," she said slowly. "This isn't just about winning battles. It's about what kind of people we are, what kind of future we want to build." Voss nodded, offering a small but genuine smile. "That's exactly it, Commander." Brant stood up, her mind now racing with the enormity of the choice she had made. She had always believed that war was about survival, but perhaps there was more to it than that. Perhaps, in the end, it was about humanity's ability to rise above the destruction and chaos, to show that they could choose peace when the cost was high. Later that evening, Brant found herself standing in front of the brig, staring through the transparent walls at Krakos, who was still seated in the corner of his cell. His expression remained as cold as ever, though there was an underlying wariness in his eyes. He had been quiet ever since the decision had been made to release him, and Brant found herself wondering what was going through his mind. The door to the brig opened, and Voss stepped in, his presence a quiet support. "Commander," he said softly, "the crew's starting to get restless. Some of them don't understand your decision. They're questioning why we're letting him go." Brant's gaze didn't leave Krakos. "They're questioning me, not the decision." Voss didn't reply, but she could sense his understanding. She approached the glass, her voice steady. Krakos. His eyes flicked up to meet hers. You're releasing me, he said, his voice tinged with disbelief, but there was no fear. Why? Brant took a step closer, her reflection merging with his in the glass. Because humanity doesn't only survive by fighting Krakos. We survive by knowing when to stop. Krakos scoffed, a bitter laugh escaping him. You believe this will change anything? That mercy will save you? You're weak. Brant held his gaze without flinching. We're not weak, and that's something you'll learn soon enough. Krakos fell silent for a moment, as if digesting her words. Then, finally, he spoke again, his voice softer, though still filled with disdain. We shall see, human. As she turned away, Brant knew that what she had done couldn't be undone. It was a choice that would ripple through the galaxy, affecting the course of the war, of humanity's future. She had chosen mercy, but whether it would be seen as strength or weakness was yet to be determined. Voss fell in step beside her as they walked down the hallway. Are you ready for this? He asked quietly. Brant paused, looking out the window at the stars once more. For the first time since the decision had been made, she felt the weight of the moment. No, she admitted softly, but I have to be. And with that, she moved forward, carrying the burden of mercy and the hope that it would lead them to something better. Chapter 4. The day had arrived. Brant stood at the edge of the command deck, gazing out at the cold void of space. The stars twinkled beyond the reinforced glass, a cruel reminder of the vastness of the universe and how small they all were in comparison. Today would be the day that humanity's fate would shift one way or another. Commander, Voss's voice broke through her thoughts, steady but with an undercurrent of tension. The order to release him is set. All systems are ready. Brant turned to face him, her features unreadable. She had made the decision to release Krakos, but it didn't make the action any easier. The weight of that choice was like a storm cloud over her, growing heavier with each passing moment. The ship hummed softly beneath her feet, as if it, too, could sense the shift. The crew was waiting for something they didn't fully understand. They had followed her through countless battles, but this was something else entirely. They had never seen her hesitate before, and now, more than ever, Brant could feel the doubt seeping into the corners of their minds. Is everyone prepared? She asked, her voice calm but tinged with a sharp edge. Voss hesitated before answering, his eyes betraying a flicker of uncertainty. Yes, Commander, but I think you should know, the crew's not exactly unanimous about this decision. Some of them, they don't believe it's the right move. Brant nodded. She had expected it. The decision to release Krakos wasn't a simple one. It went against everything that military logic and wartime strategy demanded. The Kren were known for their brutality, their inability to see weakness in mercy. And yet, humanity had been given an opportunity to show something different, something better. Brant had hoped that this gesture would be seen as a sign of strength, but now, standing at the brink of that decision, she wondered if she had been naive. I've made my decision, Brant said quietly, her gaze unwavering. We're doing this. We show them what humanity is capable of, mercy and strength both. Voss's face softened with understanding. I know. I hope you're right. The door slid open, and the rest of the crew members gathered in the command room, their eyes searching for guidance, for reassurance. Brant took a deep breath and squared her shoulders. Listen up, she began, her voice firm but gentle. Today, we're doing something unprecedented. We're not just releasing a prisoner. We're sending a message to the galaxy that humanity's strength isn't just in how we fight, but in how we choose to be. This will be seen by the Kren, by the Federation, by everyone. And I will not have any of you second-guessing that decision. You follow my lead, and we'll make it count. The room was silent, the weight of her words hanging heavy. It was clear that some of the crew wasn't fully convinced, but Brant had no time for doubt. She turned away from them, walking towards the exit. The brig was quiet. Krakos sat in his cell, his posture still regal despite the shackles binding his wrists. He didn't move when the door slid open, didn't acknowledge the presence of the soldiers who entered. His eyes, cold and calculating, met Brant's as she stepped forward. "Commander," he said, his voice low and unwavering, "you've made a mistake." Brant didn't flinch. "I've made the choice I believe is right," she said, her voice calm but resolute. "We're releasing you." Krakos' lips curled into a faint smile, one that spoke more of pity than triumph. "You think this will save you? That I will walk away from this, grateful for your mercy? You're wrong. Human." Brant remained steady, her gaze locked on his. "You'll leave. But it's not about what you think. It's about showing that we have the strength to choose a different path, even when the easier choice is to destroy. You'll walk away, but your life won't be taken. And that, Krakos, is what you will never understand." Krakos said nothing for a moment, his eyes narrowing. Then he stood, his movements slow, deliberate. He was tall, his frame imposing even in chains. But Brant didn't flinch. She didn't step back. "You humans are strange," he said, his tone almost contemplative. "You show mercy to a beast like me, expecting it to change the game. But this will only make you weaker. You don't understand the Kren. We will take advantage of this weakness." Brant didn't answer immediately. She let the silence stretch between them, feeling the weight of his words. And yet, she still stood firm. She wasn't about to let him shake her resolve. "I'm not doing this for you," she said softly, but with conviction. "I'm doing this for everyone else. For the future. For humanity. The galaxy is changing, Krakos. You just don't see it yet." The soldiers around them began to unlock the restraints on Krakos, preparing him for transport. He remained silent, but didn't resist. As the last of the chains were removed, he stood tall once more, towering over Brant. There was a strange moment of stillness as they stared at each other, two beings so different yet bound by this one decision. "I don't expect you to understand," Brant said, turning away from him. "But when you leave, remember this, it's not weakness. It's humanity." Krakos looked at her one last time, his expression unreadable. "We shall see," he muttered, before turning to leave. Brant stood there for a moment, watching the alien general walk away. It was a strange feeling, this sense of finality. She had just released a prisoner who could have been the end of them all. Yet in this moment, humanity had chosen something more, something greater than survival. Voss approached her slowly, his eyes carefully studying her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice low, almost concerned. Brant gave him a small, tired smile. "I think I am," she said quietly. "I'm just not sure what comes next." Voss nodded, his expression serious. "Whatever happens, Commander, we'll face it together. You've made the right call. I believe in you." The words, simple as they were, offered her a small measure of comfort. She turned back to face the command deck, the weight of her decision still pressing down on her. But now, there was a sense of peace in knowing that the choice had been made. The path ahead was uncertain, but humanity had taken a stand. They had chosen mercy over vengeance, strength over destruction. And perhaps, just perhaps, that would be enough to change the course of the war. For the first time in a long while, Brant felt the faintest spark of hope. Chapter 5, the silence that followed Krakos' release, was unnerving. The Valor moved steadily through the black void of space, but the tension among the crew was palpable, thick enough to cut through the air. Brant stood on the command deck, watching the stars drift past, a silent observer to the swirling storm inside her mind. The decision had been made, the orders executed. But the consequences, those were yet to unfold. A soft beep from the console interrupted her thoughts. Voss appeared at her side, his face a mask of professionalism, but she could see the flicker of concern in his eyes. "Commander, the Federation is sending a follow-up transmission. It's a public statement about Krakos' release," he said, his tone carefully neutral. Brant nodded, turning away from the viewport to face the console. She had expected this. There would be eyes watching, waiting for the Valor's next move. She knew that what they did next would determine whether the galaxy saw humanity as weak or strong, whether this act of mercy would be celebrated or condemned. Voss tapped the command on the console, and Admiral Ruiz's face appeared on the screen. She looked composed, but there was an edge to her voice. Commander Brant, the release of General Krakos is a bold step. It's not only an act of mercy, but of diplomacy. You've made the right choice. The Federation is behind you. This is an opportunity for peace. We believe that your actions could spark a change in the Kren's approach. Brant listened, her lips pressed together in a tight line. Peace. She had hoped this was the outcome, hoped that her decision would pave the way for something better. But the Kren were relentless, and peace was often a fragile thing. Admiral, I need to know something. Brant spoke, her voice calm but firm. Do you believe this will change anything? That the Kren will see this as an opportunity for peace, or as a sign of weakness? Ruiz's expression shifted slightly, but she didn't hesitate. The Federation believes this will set a new precedent. Strength through mercy. You've already shown that humanity is different from the Kren. What happens now is up to them. Brant's gaze hardened. It was up to them, wasn't it? I'll wait for further instructions, Brant said, her voice steady, even as doubt crept into the corners of her mind. The transmission ended, and the room fell back into an uneasy silence. Days passed, and the silence on the Valor grew thicker. There was no immediate retaliation from the Kren, but neither did there seem to be a shift toward peace. The crew, though still loyal to Brant, murmured among themselves. The uncertainty of the future weighed heavily on everyone. Some officers still believed that the decision to release Krakos was a mistake, that it had opened a door the Kren would walk through without hesitation. Others, however, began to see the potential of the move. Brant had made her choice, but the aftermath was something she had not fully anticipated. In the mess hall, Brant found Captain Alara sitting at a table, her food untouched. Alara was a loyal officer, a fierce strategist, and a quiet presence on the ship. But now, she looked troubled. Alara, Brant said, sitting across from her. You've been quiet. I thought you'd be the first to tell me that I've doomed us all. Alara's lips twitched into a half-smile, but it didn't reach her eyes. You know I'm not one to sugarcoat things, Commander. I've seen the looks the crew's been giving you. They don't trust it. You're the one they follow into battle, but they're not sure about this. Brant leaned back in her chair, her hands clasped in front of her. I know, but I had to make a choice. I can't control how they see it, but I believe in it. I believe this is the only way forward. Alara nodded slowly. I get it, but you're not the only one who's carrying the weight of this decision. If it fails, it's on all of us, not just you. I know, Brant replied, her voice quiet. I've always known that, but sometimes you have to make the hard choice, even when you're not sure what the outcome will be. Alara didn't respond right away. She took a deep breath, then set her utensils down. Just be prepared, Commander. If this blows up in our faces, we'll be the ones cleaning up the mess. You're not the only one who will have to answer for this. Brant's eyes met hers, understanding in the unspoken words that passed between them. I know, but it's a risk I'm willing to take. Days turned into weeks. The Kren Empire remained silent, watching but not acting. There were no retaliatory strikes, no new offensives. In the quiet of space, as the Valor patrolled the perimeter of human space, Brant couldn't shake the feeling that they were waiting for something, waiting for her decision to show its true face. The silence was a breath held, waiting for the release of tension that would inevitably come. And then it came. A transmission came through, encrypted but unmistakable. Vasa's voice crackled through the intercom. Commander, you need to see this. Brant moved swiftly to the command deck, her heart racing in her chest. She was about to watch the galaxy's reaction unfold. On the screen, an image of Krakos appeared. His face was grim, eyes hard, yet there was a shift in his posture. He stood in front of a backdrop that looked like a war room. His own people, the Kren High Command, behind him. I am Krakos, he said, his voice carrying across the galaxy. The human commander has shown us mercy. She has released me when death would have been a more fitting end. And for that, I will grant her this, a truce. The words hung in the air, almost too heavy to process. Humanity has proven its strength, Krakos continued. We have long considered mercy a weakness, but now we see it as a strength we must reckon with. If this gesture is sincere, Then let this be the beginning of a new understanding. If the humans choose peace, so will we. If they continue to fight, then we will meet them on the field, but they will no longer fight alone." The transmission ended. The room was silent. Brant stood still, her mind racing. Had it worked? Had her act of mercy truly changed something? The Kryn, acknowledging their opponent's strength, now held out a hand, one that could either be met with an embrace or a clenched fist. "Well," Voss said quietly, "I think that's about as close to a victory as we're going to get." Brant's heart still thudded in her chest, but there was something else now. Relief, hope, maybe even a glimmer of peace. She had made her choice, and for the first time, she felt like it might just be enough to change the course of history. As she turned away from the screen, Brant knew that the future was still uncertain, but humanity had taken its first step down a new path. And that, she thought, was all anyone could ever ask for.